Hey there YouTube. So today, finally going to replace the wiper blade, motor, and transmission on this 2009 Cadillac Escalade. Here's an example, the wiper's moving slowly. And you can kind of see that it's freezing up. But as I move this switch, you can see it kind of moves a little bit still. And it's trying to put itself back. And then, like, even if I go to an intermittent setting, it's still moving very slowly and locking up. So that's all the way through the intermittents. Here's low, and there's high. So, regardless of the input, it's moving about the same, and that's barely at all. So more than likely this motor's toast, and it'll be one of those things we'll have to replace the motor. But first we'll try and get the wipers back to the stop position down low. And I don't know if it's a force feedback thing or if just in general, because the car is now 12 years old, I guess, at least. And with over 200,000 miles, that's a lot of windshield wiper time. And then on a lot of windshields, you'll have this little notch. So I don't know how well it'll focus. Right there. And it's just a little indicator that shows where your wipers should be. Oh, now it focuses. And then that's on both sides. So this is close enough that I'm going to leave it here and just shut her down. Look at the wiper. You can see that little line just below the wiper. And ideally, especially if these wipers were set properly, they would stop right at that location. But whenever we go to replace these, I'll definitely make sure they're set right. The tools that you need. So I used a 1/4" drive ratchet with a 7mm deep socket for the cowl trim bolts. Then for the wiper motor and transmission mounts, I used this 10mm, 12mm ratchet wrench. Then for the wiper arm nuts, you need either a 15mm ratchet or a 15mm wrench. I used the wrench because it helped me get under the hood easy. Then you could use that ratchet for just about anything, but I really didn't use the ratchet. So, but you could have used a larger ratchet if you had, the right sockets. Then flat bladed screwdriver is what I use to help pop up the side pieces. Otherwise, if you have a trim clip tool like this one, you could use that. And also, like, let's say that you were having a problem with that Christmas tree pin that's in the center of the cowl, you could use that to get it done to help you pop it out. And then some type of hammer just to lightly wrap on top of the wiper arm, the stud that goes up through it, to help knock them loose. So the motor's been acting up a bit, and it could be one of those things where it could be just the motor itself or it could be the transmission. But I ordered off of Rock Auto, basically that box over there, the whole motor and transmission. So it'll take out two problems with more or less one large part to replace. And then the first thing we'll be doing is we'll be removing the wiper arms and then this air grill up here. The wiper arms look like it should be fairly simple. They've got this little cap that covers where the nut tightens down. You can see the hose here wraps, you know, you can almost kind of counterclockwise, but it wraps around on the outside of both wipers. So when you go to reassemble it, make sure you've got that on the right side. So basically, I'll pop these caps off, spray a little bit of PB Blaster onto the nuts real quick to help loosen the nut up and stuff like that, and also help maybe try and loosen up the arm itself. And then I'll pop this loose and get these wipers popped off. Normally these just pop off, so you should be able to take, I recommend like almost like a pocket screwdriver, and see if you can't just gently pry it. That worked almost too well. So that's loose. And the key is just to do it gently, so you're not trying to pry hard, because you're not trying to break anything. And then that just pops off. And one of the biggest things is that you want to look for like these little lines in your windshield. If you don't have these lines in your windshield, then try and make sure your wiper blades are parked all the way down, because that'll help you whenever you go to put your wiper blades back on, your wiper arms. That way it's aligned properly. So right now, this isn't fully in park. It's not all the way down. So whenever I wind up replacing the whole transmission and motor, I'll probably run it real quick, and then I'll actually bolt the arms down once the transmission's hit full park. But you can always take maybe like a little bit of Sharpie or like a grease pen or even just simple like chalk or something like that and make a mark. Otherwise, if like your windshield's kind of dirty, you can make a mark, or you could look for like a dirt line that you can reference. Right? So let's see. That's starting to hit just a little bit. Does that hit? Yeah, that hits right there. Okay, let's try open the hood up, I guess. So anytime you're working on a car, I'd highly recommend using some sort of like fender cover, just because it helps protect it. Otherwise, like if you see me and I'm wearing kind of a, you know, a ratty hoodie or something, that's kind of the same thought process. Is basically I'm trying to put something soft in between me and the vehicle. That way you don't wind up scratching it. So to get the wiper arms off, sometimes you have to put a little bit of something underneath the arm to steady the arm. And as you can see, there's movement inside. So this is probably like a cushioned transmission. So this applies a little bit of force to the arm itself, and then just take a hammer, and normally if I was keeping that particular rod, which I'm pretty sure those are new on the new transmission, but I would take the nut, I have the nut flipped upside down on it, but just take it and lightly tap on the rod, and it should pop loose. So you can see it came up pretty good. There's the last little bit. So when you look at the arm itself, you see the little knurled bit. So that's basically what grabbed onto that rod. So the rod is knurled. So really there's a million ways to mount this, which is why you really wanted to have either marked your windshield or ran your vehicle or ran the motor once it's all installed to make sure it's in park, and then aligned your wipers to where you want the wipers to be in park. Okay. So the driver's side one seems to be kind of stuck for the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 7mm bolt out. I'm going to take these caps off. And we're going to see how far we can get working around it, and see if I can't get everything unbolted with still having that wiper arm on, and then work it out once it's out of the vehicle. Some vehicles have an antenna on this side. If you don't have an antenna, kind of like this one doesn't, it's just going to wind up being, there's two clips that go down, straight down here and here, and there's a clip here that goes just straight down. But basically, all that you need to do is just find that bit of a seam with a screwdriver, gently pry up, so that front part's loose, and then gently pry up again with the screwdriver. Now that part's loose, so you can see here's those two rear tabs, and here's that one that was in the front. It's just held down with those, and then there's more 7mm bolts underneath here, so just the one more. So we'll get those off, and then these little clips here, these just kind of slip on. They got little edges that catch backwards, so it's easier to take a screwdriver, kind of pry up here and then pull back. Alright, so there's these two little fingers like this, so they go just underneath the cowl here, and then when you pull those forward, as you lift up, you want to pull in this Christmas tree pin up. So it looks like the Christmas tree pin is just right there. And now it looks like this is pretty much loose. And then it'll be just trying to get the wiper arm bolts loose to see if we can't take the whole thing out as an assembly, and taking that connector loose. Alright, so there's a 10mm bolt there, 10mm bolt there, and a 10mm bolt that would be right over there, but I took it out. So those should be the ones that take everything loose, and then that connector. And just to verify, you can see here's the new part. We've got the mount, and the mount, and then here's, you can see the new like knurled end where the wiper arms will go on to. So, and then whenever you torque the arms down, it's only like the 26 pound-feet, so it's not very tight. So I'll get this put in place here in just a moment. Well, the normal hammer wasn't working on this side, and with trying to get that this driver's side wiper out, just loosening up the cowl panel isn't going to do it. You still can't work everything out. It's just something about the size of the plastic, unless I would have like maybe cut the plastic or something like that. So I tried my best with a hammer, and then wound up kind of screwing up, and did wind up cracking the windshield. So that part sucks. So I of course went to too much power and just hit it with the air hammer, and of course as soon as I hit it with the air hammer, the wiper arm pops right off. So anywho, so we've got that wiper arm is loose now, the cowl panel is loose, and then let me see, probably can disconnect it right about here. So right here there's a rubber line that goes to the hard line here. We'll disconnect that, get it out of the way, and then we'll pull the motor out. So with the motor unbolted, you can kind of wiggle the cowl panel up and back. And then hopefully this is able to wiggle back out. Okay, we're gonna move the cowl panel. that was a pretty good fight to try and get the old motor and transmission out. Because you've got where it mounts here, and you've got this area right here that sticks out, and then that area right there, it's all pretty tight in here. But basically what I did was I dropped it down in on this side. So I dropped that arm down on this side, and then I swung everything as far over here as I could. I got this side clear, and then brought it out through this section here. So if I were to reverse the procedure, so it's rocked back a little bit. So you can see there's where the wipers go. And then you slide it. It's hard one-handed. Slide it all the way over here. So it's going like underneath that section. And now it's basically lying rocked all the way back. Now we'll take it, flip it almost to the upward position. Lift this side up to clear. Set that there. And there we are. So again, to take it out, take the whole thing, take it down, slide it that way, rock it back, pull up, slide over, and slide out. And go back in your hole. Get it in, slide it back. Clear this section over here, put that back up. She's about where she's supposed to be. So I'll get the bolts put in, I'll hook the connector back up, and then I'll get the cowl probably put back on, because now everything's just reversing what I did before. We've got the motor bolted back down. All 3 bolts are tight. Put the electrical connector on, and then be sure that clicks in place. That way you know it's all the way fully engaged. And you can even, give it a little tug just to make sure. Then this line here, make sure that you've got it coming up through there. Likewise over here, and that it's connected. Then if you took it apart over here, make sure you've got it hooked back together. And then the other thing is that there's a small little notch right there. That notch is where the line goes through. So make sure that when you go to put this down, that you've got the hose in that notch. Then you've pretty much got this just about licked. So the big thing would be to put this back down, put the 7mm bolts back in. Get these clips, the little fingers over here, the one here and the one here, underneath here properly. Then hopefully find the hole with the Christmas tree pin, push it all the way down and in. That way it's good and set. So we're good with that. Then same thing over here. You'll put those 2 7mm bolts in, and then you'll snap the end caps on. Everything's pretty much back together. The only thing now is to put the wiper arms on. And like I said before, you don't know if this is in full park. So go ahead and turn the key on. And run your wipers just once. So see how fast I can move. So we'll trigger the fog swipe. Oh, we'll do the fog swipe again. So you can see there. So now it should be in park. So from here you can just turn the key back off and set your arms in place. So that should be all set up. Just have to set the arm down on it. Make sure you've got the hose going the right direction. All right. Now, here's where those marks are going to come in handy. So with the mark right there, you want to put your wiper arm directly over the mark. So really, if you didn't have this wiper on, would be the best way to do it. But you can see it pretty much is right on the line. So that should be pretty lined up. Then you can see the old dirt line from where it was before. So even those are usable as long as you knew the vehicle was going, or the wiper blades are going into a full park. And then when you tighten these down, they'll change direction a little bit, but you should be really close. Same thing with this one. Got the line right there. You can see the old dirt lines. Let's try and set that as close as possible. So this is sprung. There's a spring right underneath here, and that applies tension. Then when you tighten it down, it'll slightly change the angle. So now we'll go ahead and set the nuts on. And then again, this is only 26 foot-pounds, so it's not super crazy tight. It's just tight enough that it sets the knurls into the blade, or the wiper arm. And then we pop the caps on, we should be done. I've got the nuts on the wiper arms just tight enough to hold the arms on. And we're just going to test and see real quick to see if they kind of go back to the 0 points. So you can see the black line, and it goes back to the black line. So we should be pretty good. So now I just finished tightening these up. It just needs to be tightened just a little bit more. And then throw the cap on, and we should be good to go. So wiper motor and transmission. Here's the old part. Now a lot of people will say that these will dry out and freeze up. So these little joints here. Same thing with this one here. And this has some pink residue on it. Not 100% sure what that is. That might just be from windshield washer fluid getting down in. But I don't really see anything kind of froze up. So my bet would be the motor was probably just dying. The transmission was probably fine. But by doing both of them at the same time, at least I didn't have to take everything back apart again just to do the job one more time. So now we're at a dealer. There's dealer parts and some tools, as well as some aftermarket tools that you can put on to help pull and separate these. But I believe there's a specific dealer only part, or dealer only tool, for separating this section here on this transmission. But like where I was having issues with getting the arms off, I'm pretty sure if I would have had a small, like 2-jaw puller, I probably could have put the jaws on either side of the wiper blade arm and then used the screw down to push on this to help pop that loose. But it's the things that you think of afterwards. The big thing is that with the vehicle being a 2009 with over 200K, it's had some miles and time on it. So these wipers were just, especially this one over here, was just on almost way too tight. So either it had a bit of corrosion that wasn't allowing it to come off quite right, or that would have been kind of, you know, semi-normal, or it was over tightened by somebody else. So like this windshield is an aftermarket windshield. So at some point in time, someone else has done this job as far as taking these panels off, because whenever you replace the windshield, you'll wind up taking the cowl panel off. A lot of times you'll take this side trim off. So, but the other tip I would give is that when you do go to tighten these nuts, you can do this with an impact, and I've done it with an impact before, but honestly I highly recommend using just hand tools, because even though I did this trying to pry that arm out, I had a buddy do something very similar to this, tightening an arm down, and then as he was running the electric impact, once it got tight, the gun kicked and then smacked the windshield and cracked the windshield. So it's one of those things where you want to try and do what you can in order to not have to replace your windshield. So, but inevitably what will wind up happening is that I'll try and get this replaced, and then someone will wind up taking this all back apart anyway, and then that'll be another good point to see, just because there's times where even the glass shops that replace the windows don't line your wipers back up, or maybe you just had your glass replaced and suddenly your wipers don't work. Well, it might be because those nuts aren't fully tight enough to engage the knurls to get things to work. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of happens that can be one of a million different things, but a lot of times it's going to wind up coming down to who was the last person to touch something. So this job wasn't too bad. A little weird trying to work everything out.
All right. So it's actually raining today. And I'm so glad I did the wiper motor and transmission assembly, because that's a huge difference over what I was doing before. And then even if you hit the sprayers, it's still moving nice and quick.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll check you next time.